Thanks for the intro, Cheryl. Thanks very much, Jan, for inviting me here. And thanks very much to MUFON for putting on such an auspicious event. It'd be nice to actually be there and hear everyone else. Jan did kindly give me a login for MUFON TV, but somewhat ironically, the username and password I couldn't get in using that. So I wasn't able to hear anyone who's spoken yet today, but I'll listen to it later or tomorrow. In March of 2002, I was arrested for hacking into Army, Navy, and Air Force computers, as well as the Pentagon and NASA. The arresting officers from the National High-Tech Crime Unit, which is now part of SOCA, the Serious Organized Crime Agency, told me that I'd probably do 6 months community service. This turned out to be a highly inaccurate prediction. My arresting officers went to Washington and met with some top brass to discuss my case, and also to illegally hand over my hard drive to US authorities, which they're still in possession of. The police officers were obviously very impressed by the military officers they'd met, because when they returned from Washington and interviewed me for the second time, they had a very serious tone about them. It was a very different ball game by them. The second interview was in the summer of 2002, in August, I think. And in November of the same year, the US authorities announced that they intended to extradite me to stand trial in America. And that on paper, at least, I was facing 70 years in jail, which was a far cry from 6 months community service. I think it's also important to give you a very brief history of me and why I decided to hack into these systems. I was born in Glasgow in 1966. I had no siblings. My parents broke up when I was 6. Spent another year living in Glasgow, living with my dad, before going down to London to live permanently with my mum and stepdad. My parents always encouraged the use of imagination and creativity, so I was quite a self-sufficient child in terms of play and recreation. On top, I was always asking questions about the stars, the moon, and the other planets. And this fascination just grew as I got older. Always maintaining a sort of layperson's interest in astronomy and physics and all things space related. I did have one UFO sighting myself, just the one. It's the only time I've ever seen something with my own eyes in the sky that I just couldn't explain. I was in my bedroom, that was at the top of the house at the time. I was about 11 or 12, I think, just looking up at the sky at dusk. I saw this glowing red light just zooming from my very high extreme left, going at a massive arc right across the sky to the horizon on my right. But it wasn't traveling in a straight line. It was really jiggling. It was like brownie in motion, doing lots of seemingly random wiggles as it followed this course. It was a very strange thing. I mean, yeah, if you had been flying in that thing, I would have felt you'd just be thrown around like a rag doll, but who knows. When I was about 12, I joined BUFORA, the British UFO Research Association, which is still going strong today. The extension of an interest in the stars to an interest in the life that may live on the planets around those stars is unnatural. The thought that someone may be visiting us was extremely interesting, extremely interesting. Of course, as a boy turns into a young man, he develops other interests, and my passion for science and strange phenomena was put on the back burner for some time as I started to explore other aspects of life. I left school and spent years doing different jobs, from labouring to hairdressing to office jobs, factory work, warehouse work. I spent about a year in each job, looking for something that could hold my interest. As my dad always said, most jobs aren't interesting, son. That's why they pay you to do them. It's obviously. I didn't leave school with many qualifications, but I did have a passion for computers. I was a self-taught programmer, first in BASIC and then in assembly language or machine code. And if you're that sort of person, then you'll know that you end up being the one that all your friends call for help. Their computers go wrong. It still happens to this day, very annoying. And then one day someone suggested I should try and get a job in computing, which weird, I'd never thought of myself. Not having any formal qualifications or experience, the only jobs I could get initially were installation and upgrade contracts, where our business was moving from like Windows 3.11 to Windows for Work groups. Yes, it was a long time ago. And as time went on and my experience grew, I was eventually contracting doing network installations, maintenance, troubleshooting, and eventually systems administration. Then one day, at one of my jobs in 93 or 94, I got my first look at the internet. Wow. Using the Mosaic browser. I was amazed that we could view text and images on computers on the other side of the world. It's fantastic. I knew it'd be a big thing in time to come, and I definitely wanted it in my house too, not just at work. Even though Microsoft famously said it didn't think there was anything to it, but I don't know if that's a rumor that's true, but apparently there's. I got my first dial-up connection in '95, I think. By then we had a variety of search engines, no Google yet, and millions of websites, so it had already become a useful resource. And the number of UFO enthusiast sites was astounding, so many of them, I could hardly believe it. I had a lot of catching up to do, so whenever I could, I'd browse the net, reading up on UFO history and how the phenomena had grown over the years. Around this time, fuel prices were very high in my country. We had cases of elderly people in the UK having to choose between warmth and food. We called it heat or eat, heating or eating. And many of them died due to hypothermia because they couldn't afford to pay their fuel bills. And it's a growing problem to this day. In 2015, 15,000 people in Britain died due to so-called fuel poverty. 15,000 people. And one subject I'd read a lot about in connection with UFOs was the free energy. A power source that was virtually unlimited, output more energy than was required to operate it. They call them over-unity devices. And it's not a mystery, by the way. Everyone has an over-unity device in their home. It's your fridge. The average refrigerator is about 3 times over-unity. And because the heat it puts out, you can't make the heat it puts out with the electricity that goes in. A very well-made fridge, like a science laboratory fridge, can be up to 5 or 6 times over unity. Interesting fact. So although you can't create or destroy energy, you can transform it and kind of amplify it somehow. I don't know. I'm not a physicist. So in my mind, these lines of thoughts converge. Old people dying, no energy, then possibly free energy that's been hidden from us, hugely unfair. So many of today's problems could be solved if we had free energy. And the UFOs that I've read so much about and watched so many videos of, they seem to operate on a propulsive principle that was extremely advanced and probably tapping the zero-point energy that I'd read about, literally pumping electrons, from the fluctuations of the fabric of the universe. It's crazy stuff. So why didn't we have this technology? Many countries around the world had a serious interest in UFOs, even detailing in their Air Force's instruction manuals how to engage one and how to report it. We had the famous Roswell case where bodies and a craft were supposedly recovered. So why didn't we have amazing flying vehicles and free energy for everyone? Why would you keep that from people? Elitism. I bought the Disclosure Project book. Wanting to know more of these people's stories and, more importantly, to use the book for intelligence gathering on possible locations that were internet connected and had something to do with the UFO cover-up. And having read the book, as far as I was concerned, Dr. Greer's star witness in this concern was Donna Hare. Here was a woman who'd been inside one of NASA's sanitizing labs, where they regularly remove UFOs from satellite and spacecraft imagery. She was an image specialist. I think she was doing launch lines at the time. And she said that the lab she saw was in Building 8 of Johnson Space Center. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. It was amazing. I had a physical location that was fairly specific, down to the building that the lab was in. She said she'd been in the lab and been shown one of the photographs by one of her colleagues, which he shouldn't have really done, because that should be secret compartmented as well. But thank God he did, because now we know. But how do you get into a network like that? And it turned out to be all too easy, far too easy. I wish it hadn't been easy, then I wouldn't be here today. Computer communication languages are called network protocols. The HTTP you use in your web browser is a protocol standing for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Your email service runs on IMAP, which is Internet Message Access Protocol. So there's protocols for specific jobs, as well as general protocols that provide for computer-to-computer communication. One of these general protocols is called NetBIOS, which stands for Network Basic Input System. As its name suggests, it's a system that provides basic input-output across the network. For instance, if your office is on a Windows network, when you copy and paste a file from your machine to a colleague's shared drive, it's NetBIOS doing all the legwork and allowing both computers to talk to each other. So that's what NetBIOS is for. It's for local area networks like offices or homes. It's not very secure. Unfortunately, at that time, an out-of-the-box Windows installation defaulted to using NetBIOS not just across your home or office network, but also across the internet, basically exposing your network to the world. And one method NetBIOS uses for access to any network resource is the standard username and password combination. And the administrator username, the administrator account, is the most powerful account on the PC, apart from the system itself. And it has access to almost anything. So it was obvious to me that I had to scan the JSC Johnson Space Center network, looking for PCs that accepted NetBIOS connections, and then seeing if they had either weak passwords or unset passwords on the administrator accounts. And it was quite a quick scan. It didn't take long. A surprising number of PCs responded to NetBIOS probes and also returned administrator accounts that had no password set, not just a weak password like password itself, literally no password, blank. Excuse me. So it was very easy to set up a tunnel between me and the remote PC that I could use to install remote control software, a bit like PC Anywhere. So it's literally like you're there on the screen, like you're sitting at the monitor of the other computer. You could use a mouse, interact with the desktop, etc. Before installing the remote control software, I first had to find out which PCs were in Building 8. This was accomplished by using NetBIOS commands again to list the PCs on the remote network. Luckily for me, NASA's IT people were very diligent in their hardware auditing. Every PC had location information as well as serial numbers and the like for auditing purposes. So it didn't take long to compile a list of Building 8 machines that also had administrator accounts that had no password set. I installed the remote control software on the first PC in the list, logged on and looked at the desktop, which is fairly minimal, if I recall correctly, but it had two interesting folders, just like Donna had said. One was called RAW and the other was called Processed, or similar words, I can't remember exactly. I double-clicked on the RAW folder, and there was a huge list of files, many of them being over 200 megabytes in size, which was quite large back in dial-up days, because it took about 5 or 6 minutes just for 1 megabyte back then. I considered transferring a few of the files in one go, but thought I'd best inspect one of them first. I can't remember the file extension, but it was a proprietary NASA format, not one of the common image formats. So I just double-clicked one of the files, and the associated imaging software launched. And I waited, and then I waited, and then sort of line by line, very slow, very jerky, the image started appearing on the screen, but it was painfully slow. So I shut down the imaging software. I turned the color down to 4 bits, possibly 2 bits, so you get a lot less color. Turn the resolution down to, I think, 640 by 480 in order to get a look at this image as quickly as possible, in low color, low resolution, and then download it, and then close the connection. So I thought I had plenty of time. I thought I was going to watch this, then transfer it across. I launched the image again, and it was still painfully slow, but it was a few times faster than it was the first time round. And the top section of the image just seemed to be like a muddy sort of black and grey. But then the hemisphere of a planet started to appear. And I began to see like cloud formations. I don't remember seeing any recognizable terrain or any terrain at all. I just assumed it was Earth because it was white clouds, and the muddy darkness was obviously the space above Earth. And then the craft began to appear. First thing I saw was the top of a dome, because although it was classic cigar-shaped, it had these sort of geodesic golf ball, like radar domes above and below. And no features in the craft at all, no insignia, no rivets, no seams, no sign of your standard man-made manufacturing at all, very smooth one-piece object. Then I jumped to my seat because the mouse started to move, on its own. It obviously wasn't moving on its own. Someone who was physically at the machine had seen what I was doing, and they moved the mouse pointer over to the network icon in the system tray, right-clicked it, and chose disconnect. I couldn't believe it. As I was watching, I hadn't even seen the whole image yet, and I'd been disconnected. So that was my eureka moment, but I also lost connection at the same time. But I had seen it. I found exactly what Donna Hare had said would be there. Exactly where she said it would be, a sanitizing lab in Building 8 of Johnson Space Center that processed the imagery. And the first image I looked at featured some kind of exotic craft. So it was confirmation in my eyes. It was confirmation of Donna Hare's amazing story. I also found another piece of evidence. I think it was on a Navy network. I can't quite remember. It supports the secret space fleet theory. It was an Excel spreadsheet entitled Non-Terrestrial Officers. I don't know if that was the file name or just the title once you were in the spreadsheet. It had names, ranks, ship names, List of materiel, spelled near at the end, materiel, meaning military materials. Chemicals, like exotic sounding chemicals that were under ship-to-ship transfers and fleet-to-fleet transfers. So it's, quite an exotic document. It was almost like you found the admin office of the secret space program. Non-terrestrial officers. That I googled the phrase at the time; it was nowhere to be found. And now, if you Google it, it's just in connection with my story.